Well, Tim Bohr, we've talked about leadership and we talk about roles. And I guess my question is, it seems like a band that has those hired guns on on the road, that could be a real opportunity because at least the people who are in those hired guns roles, that role is very clearly defined. There's a real limit as to what they are allowed to influence for the rest of the band dynamic. Do you have any sort of thoughts on the advantages for an artist taking hired guns out on the road for those reasons?
I really think that there's too many variables to answer that definitively. You know, you know, look, we got two very different situations on this call between Mike with Ice Nine Kills and Tim with Underoath, both highly successful bands, both bands proving to have a lot of longevity, and I think it has a lot to do with the personality makeup of of certain members of the band. I think it has a lot to do with who's driving the creative content. Tim mentioned it. With Underoath, there's three creative forces in that band. That band's probably not the same band. It might be an equally successful different band, but they're probably not the same band if there's just one, creative force in that band. On the other hand, Mike's got Ice Nine Kills, and there's one main creative force there. But I don't know how to answer that question specifically, because I do think there's just a lot of variables there. But there's this is kind of one of those situations where there's no wrong answer. And I think, look, if you've got hired guns in the band and they're supporting the end game the right way, then no shame in that game. There's no if that doesn't interrupt the process of trying to get from A to Z, and doing it in a non-stressful or a less stressful kind of way to meet those goals, there's no wrong answer there, I don't think.
Cool, thanks, Mike. Communication is one thing and being a skilled communicator, but what about band agreements, especially when you talk about where people everywhere in all walks of life had trouble communicating in all relationships, it usually comes down to money. Are there band agreements that you encourage your clients, or you have in the past, to have with each other in terms of money and how money is going to be split?
Yeah, amongst other things. I mean, some of the stuff Tim is talking about, Tim from Underoath, it's like even the decision-making process can go into a band agreement. It doesn't have to, however. Yeah, I think, typically most bands, I presume, start off as friends and they're doing it for fun. Maybe they've got some aspirations, but really they've got to go out and see if there's any traction in any capacity. They've got to do it. They've got to create the couple EPs. They've got to lose a member. They've got to do any of that before they need to really worry about whether or not somebody's going to run off with, the 10-speed bicycle that the singer has, when it all falls out. There's got to be something to agree on. And so my experience has been, however, once you've got to that point, and as Tim Bohr just said, there's no definitive point that I can tell you other than when you're starting to get to, you're starting to get to a place where the asset, whether it's the name, the logo, and the underlying music and the splits that come with it and the money generated from it, once it's worth something, right? Then, there should probably be some form of agreement that, navigates what happens when somebody leaves. How is it that somebody leaves? There's a lot that goes into those, but I would recommend them as opposed to not recommending them. Absolutely.
Tim McTague, were there any best practices that you're glad that you were introduced to, you and Underoath, early in your career when it comes to what we're talking about, the business side, the money, the assets of the band?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we don't have a contract with our lawyer. We don't have a contract with our manager. We don't have a contract with our agent. And we have actually no internal agreement as a band. The only thing that we actually have legal contracts for are obviously publishing and record labels, because we can't produce music and do that without those contracts, or a merch deal or something like that. We've always operated on good faith. And that was obviously put to the test when we had our hiatus, and we had, one of our key members, Aaron, our drummer, left in 2009, came back in 16 when we kind of went on hiatus and came back. And, the way we dealt with that, without going super far into everyone's business, was like, if you're here, you're here. And if you're gone, you're gone. And the records you played on, like, when we get royalty checks, were good, but it's not like, yo, I left in December, but then after the show I played with you on December 31st, you got that big, ETID festival show. Without my work, you wouldn't have gotten those opportunities. I want residuals from that. Like, we just don't play that game. And so, like, when Daniel, our friend, came into the band, even that wasn't a hired gun scenario. It's like, dude, you come in, let's do a tour together. If you want to stay in the band, like, you're just 1/6. I don't think that that's actually correct business-wise. I'm sure, like, everyone else on this panel is literally like, oh my God, like, these freaking rednecks don't even know how to run a business, But I think for us, that's worked. But if I was an actual manager or someone consulting, which this call is, I would say you should have exit agreements, because, what happens when, I see this a lot with bands. Like, bands go off tour, bands write songs together. This even happens in our band, but we just don't care. But then, like, you see lead singer X or Y doing full record that we all wrote, acoustic, for profit, solo, like on a solo tour. And it's like, how does that work? Like, is that something that's legal? Should that be cleared? Should we share in that revenue? What does the merch look like? Are you using record assets? There's so many sticky things that if you don't trust the people you're with, it can go really sour really quick. And for us, like, we allow everyone rope, and we also have everyone's support on, like, yo, this is a little close. Let's try to massage this to where we're not chopping you at the knees, but you're not abusing our brand for personal gain. And I think a lot of bands do that. And, like, Anthony Green does that, and, Anthony from Bayside, and, Adam from TBS, like, all of the super creatives, especially the frontmen, can have side streams of revenue with also my work as the guitar player that wrote that riff that you're now playing without me there. You're on tour without me there. And so that, if you let that get to you, that can be a rub. And I think it does rub a lot of people, and it rubs people not because they're selfish. It's because I think if you look at it that way, that's actually not that cool. Also, there's got to be some sort of clearance. Like, yo, I'm trying to do this. Is everyone okay with it? Maybe it's like, yo, I'll cut you guys in, or if anyone wants to come on the tour. I don't know. Biggie probably has more, insight into multiple bands with multiple, varying famous personalities monetizing individually based on the band's brand. But I mean, for me, it's like, we don't really have any of that. And it's like, the big problem is, like, you sign a merch deal. It's a 2-year merch deal. This guy quits because he wants to go to law school 3 months in, but there's this recoup, but you have the advance. So now what do we do? Do you give me your money back so that we can put it back towards the advance? Do you stay in the band until the advance is, paid off? And we don't really do a lot of that big business where we get really deep in debt and underwater, ideally. So we've never really had that rub. And again, we've had the same lineup since 2003, aside from the few years when Aaron left and Daniel came in. So we're all in the wins and the losses long term. But it would be really sticky if someone just decided today to quit. And it's like, but we have some debt that we have to pay back, like the record advance, you're on the record contract. Like, how do we even get you off of that? And so for us, that would be a bit chaotic if someone just went bananas, because we actually don't have any legal structure there. And I know that's not right, but that's how we do it.
Can I ask you